Let's talk about what I read, or I have read roughly over the last month, reviews of 4 novels, which are And You Can Save Mankind by Terry Pratchett, the first 2 books of the second Chronicles of Amber, which are called Trumps of Doom and Blood of Amber, and The Wouldbegoods by Nesbit, which I just finished tonight. Only You Can Save Mankind was a rare Terry Pratchett that wasn't just what I read when I was a child or a younger person. It's actually the first of a trilogy. I didn't know that at the time. I didn't read the other 2. I still haven't. I've just reread this. It's technically a reread, and I sort of remember the kind of core conceit of the plot. So that was enough, enough to make it really a reread rather than what was functionally a first read. But yes, it's fun. It was good fun. It's only 174 pages or something. It's some people are going to finish it in one sitting. They're going to sit down for a few hours and just go through it. I read it over a couple of days. It wasn't that long at all. The main character, Johnny Maxwell, is playing games. This is a relevant thing. It's technically dated by its technological references. It was published in '92. And that's not true, I don't think, of the other 2, in terms of it, the technology doesn't matter. But here, he's, playing a console game, and there's a particular, on a console at the time, and there's a particular dynamic to do with how you program and how you hack games and how you copy them and stuff, which was kind of charming for me to reread. I guess it'd functionally count as a magic system to people familiar with more modern technological solutions to those problems. But yeah, Johnny Maxwell, he's playing a game, and then the aliens he's shooting start speaking to him and try to surrender to him and want him to help them. And it turns out that Johnny, he gets roped into having to save the galactic hordes. It's hard enough trying to save mankind from the galactic hordes. It's even harder trying to save the galactic hordes from mankind. So it's a reflection. It's an interesting thing, by the way, that it's written just during and after the First Gulf War, and it's pretty clear there's some trenchant observations about the war being on TV and the sort of faintly sickening aspect of the cinematization of actual war. You can see there's just a degree of commentary there from Pratchett. Certainly there's much more commentary on the human propensity to violence and the way in which we alienate others in both senses of the word. So yeah, it's a fun book. It's got some things going on. It's got some thoughts. It's got a fun cast of teenagers, or I'm not sure if I think they are teenagers. They're like 14 maybe. Johnny and his friends and the new friend he makes, as well as the aliens you meet. There's some aspects that don't wholly make sense or are never fully explained. It's not a cast iron, all-time Pratchett classic, but at the level of being a fun, quick, functional book, it's genuinely very solid. So yeah, great. And I'll read the other Johnny books, Johnny and the Bomb and Johnny and the Dead, at a later date. I read Chronicles of Amber a few years ago, which is 5 books, and that's about Corwin, and he is on our Earth, and he wakes up, he begins to regain his memory, basically, or starts to work out that he's actually from another world, and he's involved in this kind of great family feud with these otherworldly princes, of whom he is one. 9 Princes, and Amber is the first one in that series. This is, and I suppose, spoiler if you haven't read that 40-year-old series of books, 50-year-old series of books indeed, but skip forward and try to find me holding a different book to skip the spoiler. But he has a son. That's actually all that matters for now. That's the light spoiler. This is about his son Merlin, or Merle, and it starts with he's on our world, but he knows who he is, and he's dealing with the fact that every April the 30th someone tries to kill him. And he sees it as a bit of a game at this point. He's like, well, I wish I could find out who it was. And then on this particular April 30th, things begin spinning out of control quite seriously. And he is dragged, because of this, back into amber politics. This kind of is not actually the prime world, but the sort of first shadow of ultimate reality. He's brought into that. His father, Corwin, isn't around, hasn't been for a while. And So that's a mystery, what actually happened to him. There's mysteries about who's behind this plot, these plots against Merlin. Mysteries about, and in the two books, and it's a tough one because you can imagine reading them as a series at the time. When I've got a single volume, it kind of creates a different dynamic that I'm like, I just need to turn the page and the series continues. But there is a compartmentalization where, Zelazny is kind of setting up particular mysteries that develop and intensify over time. And he intentionally has callbacks and references to the first series in terms of how certain transitions happen, certain key moments. There's some interesting inversions and surprises in the first two books. For a series that is basically about sort of trippy, so it's trippy, it's wacky. He's one thing is, by the way, shows the signs of the time. Merle has programmed like a magical AI, so it is a computer. It's in a different dimension to us, so it can use the physics of that different parallel universe, and it's magical. So you can see it's into the 80s. We're getting those flavors of what turns in different places into urban fantasy and cyberpunk, different streams really of the same, I think, the same aesthetic reaction. So yeah, you get some cool trippy stuff. You get the fun of the family of Amber, which is a genuinely enjoyable thing, which I think picking apart the family relations was one of the kind of fun things in the first book, the first series. And there's just tons of twists and turns and mysteries, which are therefore impossible to speak about in any depth. Merle is a solid main character, so is his friend Luke. It's not necessarily immediately, in terms of the characters aren't immediately or the new characters aren't as immediately memorable, perhaps, as Corwin was, but then Corwin was a really all-time great character. I think the characters are basically quite good, the new characters and the old. It's nice being in Amber. It's you get a lot of time in Amber at certain points, you get a lot of time elsewhere. The mysteries are fun. Zelazny has a distinctive writing style which will sometimes give you real bits of beauty, but mostly works through our accumulation. He's really able to conjure and create scenes and places, but not via the sort of pungent, really strong imagery that you're like, oh wow, I remember, I used to think Tolkien or something, or McCarthy. It's more that he gives you the sense, this much kind of more impressionistic sense of the place via accumulation. He also has a very laconic writing style usually. It's the same in Chronicles of Amber, it's the same in Lord of Light. In terms, I suppose you can take or leave, some people might not enjoy it, but it works. It is a perfectly strong style. So yeah, I've enjoyed those. I'm basically reading another book in between each volume here, so I will be back to reading that sooner rather than later. Maybe this month, maybe just into the new year. And finally, finished tonight, and this probably my favourite of these four, The Wouldbegoods by Nesbit, the second book in her Bastable trilogy. Nesbit wrote many children's books in the late 1800s, early 1900s. I've read many of them. I'll do a video about her at some point, I think. But she wrote, most famously, she wrote The Railway Children. She wrote the Samiad trilogy, 5 children in it and its sequels. She wrote the Bastable trilogy, which is the Treasure Seekers and its sequels, of which this is one. And she wrote some well-regarded short stories. She wrote many other books too. That's kind of less than a third of her output, I think. The Wouldbegoods is, and I've read these with my kids, it's significant. This is a good book for, I think, an adult will enjoy reading on their own, but I definitely enjoyed it more reading it with my kids because I think there's a sort of back and forth, the way in which you see people react, because it's a funny book, it's a performance book, it's something, there's this whole thing where Oswald Bastable is narrating it, and usually he's trying to pretend it's not him narrating it, but occasionally he's explicit that he's the one of the siblings narrating it. And essentially, Nesbit, the books I've read of hers, this is the 7th, I guess, I've read of hers. Each story or series has a particular vibe. So, Railway Children is a kind of heartstring tugging, soft melodrama. Very, very fun book. I may have reviewed it on the channel. review the Five Children Knit trilogy, Samian trilogy, which I think I have also talked about here at some point. That's kind of magical fantasy, and each book has this different gimmick about what kind of magic you're getting into. The Bastable trilogy is about 5 children, and here they're 2 friends who are with them who cannot not get in trouble. It's kind of like Just William, but better. Just William is great fun, but this is better, purer, and it's less about kind of a boy who is essentially actually a really naughty child, and it's more these kind of quite well-meaning children on the whole, decent children, but who, whatever they do, whatever scheme they come up with, and this certainly resembles some Just William stories, but whatever scheme that seems innocent to begin with or is there to help someone else causes enormous chaos. There's also a particular subtrope of other escapades, and that's true, very true here. And Nesbit also always has this habit of drawing in some quite sweet and touching things, like there's subplots that go through the book, like a thread. There's story of a soldier in the first book, for instance, and here there's the grandma, the long lost grandma. There's a few different things in a book which are kind of drawn through and are the emotional underpinning. But these books, whereas the Railway Children is a lot of that, the Bastable books are less like that and are more, they do have that, and it's very important because that emotional satisfaction, that catharsis is still important. But the biggest thing is they are quite creative, funny farces, and not reliant on idiotic humour to be creative, funny farces. They are, they're sort of kind of Buster Keaton skit set up, but in a way. But yeah, I enjoyed this a lot. I do certainly recommend it if you have kids. If you don't, you will probably still enjoy these books. Start with the Treasure Seekers. But yeah, I enjoyed all of those books, and I will continue, as I say, with all 3 of those series. So far as it goes, they're all more than good enough to continue with. I'm in the next month. I will probably finish the second Latro book by Gene Wolfe. I will probably finish more Roger Zelazny. I'll probably finish in 5 weeks or 6 weeks. I don't remember the exact schedule. Our current buddy read on the Discord, Guy Gavriel Kay's Lions of Al Rassan, and I might try to also squeeze in the Aubrey Maturin book 2, Master and Commander book 2, Post Captain. But yeah, if you have read any of these books that I'm talking about, tell me what you think in the comments. Tell me what else you're reading at the moment. Give me some recommendations, and I'll see you next time.